It's the most powerful technology of our time. But how does artificial intelligence actually work? We're pulling back the curtain. This is AI Deconstructed.
We begin not in a laboratory, but with a question that echoes through millennia. Can we create a mind? Can we breathe life into the inanimate, craft and intelligence in our own image? This isn't a new question born of silicon and code. It is one of our oldest, most persistent dreams, a thread woven through our myths, our philosophy, and our science. Welcome to AI Deconstructed. I'm your host, and in this first episode, we're going to answer the question, what is AI? But we will not do it with a simple dictionary definition. To truly understand what artificial intelligence is, we must understand why it is. We need to trace its intellectual DNA. This journey will take us from the forges of the Greek gods to the ghettos of 16th century Prague, from the workshops of medieval inventors to the mind of the man who first dared to ask if a machine could think. We will explore this vast idea through three distinct but interconnected lenses: myths, the ancient stories that framed our ambitions and our deepest fears; minds, the philosophical wrestling match over the very definition of intelligence; and machines, the first tangible steps toward making these dreams a reality. By the end of this hour, you will see that AI is far more than a technology. It is a cultural, philosophical, and scientific quest to understand the nature of intelligence itself. To find the origins of artificial intelligence, we must travel back more than 2,700 years, to a time long before the first computer. In the imagination of ancient Greece, we meet our first robot. His name was Talos. He was not built by a modern robotics lab, but forged from bronze by Hephaestus, the Greek god of invention and blacksmithing. Talos was a wondrous and terrifying machine with a singular purpose: to protect the island of Crete. He accomplished this by marching the island's perimeter 3 times every day and hurling massive boulders at any invading ships. He was an automaton, a guardian, a weapon. The myths provide remarkable detail about his inner workings. Talos was powered by a single internal tube that ran from his head to his foot, carrying a mysterious substance called ichor, the lifeblood of the gods themselves. And like any machine, he had a vulnerability. In the epic poem Argonautica, the sorceress Medea defeats the bronze giant not with brute force, but by removing a single bolt at his ankle, allowing the divine fluid, his power source, to drain away, rendering him lifeless. This is a crucial detail, an artificial being with a specific engineered kill switch. Hephaestus's creations were not limited to lumbering giants. He also crafted Pandora. In the original telling by the poet Hesiod, Pandora was not an innocent woman who stumbled upon a box of evils. She was a beautiful artificial woman, a beautiful evil, designed by Zeus with a specific mission: to infiltrate the human world as punishment for the discovery of fire and release misery from her jar. The classic scholar Adrian Mayer argues that Pandora can be seen as a kind of ancient AI agent, programmed with a deceptive and malicious purpose. And in Homer's Iliad, we find Hephaestus in his workshop, attended by a set of golden servants who looked like women. Crucially, Homer tells us they possessed knowledge, speech, and strength, gifts bestowed upon them by the gods. These were not imagined as simple, unthinking machines. They were intelligent assistants. These stories are far more than just the science fiction of their day. They represent humanity's first case studies in the ethics of artificial creation. There is a consistent and unsettling pattern in these myths. As Adrian Mayer observes, not one of those myths has a good ending once the artificial beings are sent to Earth. Talos, the protector, is ultimately a destructive force that must be defeated. Pandora, the beautiful creation, brings chaos. This reveals a deep-seated anxiety about biotechny. the Greek term for life through craft. The very impulse to create artificial life was shadowed by the fear of its unintended consequences. The Greeks were already grappling with the control problem, a philosophical anxiety that is the direct ancestor of modern concerns about AI alignment and safety. We now move forward in time to 16th century Prague. The city's Jewish community lives under the constant threat of pogroms, violent riots often fueled by the vicious and false blood libel accusation, the anti-Semitic claim that Jews murdered Christian children to use their blood in religious rituals. In this climate of terror, the community's leader, the great scholar Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel, turns not to engineering, but to the mystical traditions of the Kabbalah. In an act that deliberately echoes God's creation of Adam from the dust of the earth, Rabbi Loew goes to the banks of the Vltava River and forms a man from mud and clay. The golem is brought to life not by ichor, but by divine magic. In most versions of the legend, this is accomplished by placing a shem, a slip of paper inscribed with one of the sacred names of God, in its mouth, or by carving the Hebrew word emet, meaning truth, upon its forehead. The golem's purpose is clear. It is a protector, a silent sentinel of superhuman strength, created as an act of divine service to defend the innocent people of the ghetto from violence. It is a symbol of hope, of divine help, arriving at the last, most anxious moment. But the story inevitably becomes a cautionary tale. The golem is an incomplete creation. It cannot speak, and it lacks true understanding or empathy. This incompleteness is the root of its danger. It begins to interpret its commands with a terrifying literalness, and in some versions, its power grows beyond the rabbi's control, until it rampages through the very ghetto it was meant to protect. The act of creation, born of piety, becomes an act of hubris when the Creator fails to control His creation. To stop the destruction, Rabbi Loew must confront his creation. He reaches up and erases the first letter, the aleph, from the word emet on the golem's forehead. The inscription now reads met, the Hebrew word for death. The creature's life force is extinguished, and it collapses back into a lifeless mound of clay. The golem legend refines the ethical questions first posed by the Greeks, focusing intently on the Creator's responsibility and the profound difference between a created agent and a truly living being. The story's power comes from the golem's incompleteness. The very word golem appears in the Talmud to describe Adam in the moments before God breathed a soul into him, an unformed substance or embryo. The golem is powerful, but it lacks a divine soul, which only God can grant. Its literal interpretation of commands is a direct parallel to a classic problem in computer science, where a system does exactly what it is told, not what its creator intended. The burden of control and the moral weight of the consequences falls entirely on the creator. The story is a sophisticated allegory, arguing that creating a powerful agent is not enough. Without genuine understanding, empathy, and a moral compass, a soul, such a creation is inherently dangerous. The dream of artificial life did not remain confined to the realm of myth and legend. The intellectual fire of the Hellenistic period and the subsequent scientific flourishing of the Islamic Golden Age began the long process of turning imagination into engineering. In the 3rd century BCE, inventors in the great city of Alexandria, the original Silicon Valley, began building the first real automata. Figures like Ctesibius of Alexandria and Philo of Byzantium were pioneers, using their understanding of hydraulics, compressed air, and mechanical cams to create moving statues and other self-operating devices. After the fall of the Roman Empire, this precious mechanical knowledge was preserved and, crucially, advanced by scholars in the Byzantine and Arab worlds. During the Islamic Golden Age, the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad sponsored a massive translation movement, systematically rendering Greek scientific and philosophical texts into Arabic. In the 9th century, three brothers known as the Banu Musa, working in Baghdad's famed House of Wisdom, authored the Book of Ingenious Devices. This landmark text was an illustrated catalogue of around 100 automated devices they had designed, including a water-powered organ and trick vessels that could automatically refill themselves. This work culminated in the 12th century with the genius of Ismail al-Jazari, a towering engineering talent often called the father of robotics. Al-Jazari did not just copy earlier designs. He innovated core mechanical principles that are still in use today. His most significant invention was the crankshaft, a device for converting rotary motion into linear motion, a foundational component of countless modern machines, from the steam engine to the internal combustion engine. His elaborate clocks, fountains, and automata featured humanoid figures with remarkably realistic movements, driven by sophisticated systems of cams, pistons, and advanced hydraulics. This history reveals that the development of AI and robotics is not a story of isolated breakthroughs, but one of a continuous, cross-cultural transmission of knowledge. The Islamic Golden Age was not merely a passive repository for ancient wisdom, it was a crucible of innovation. Scholars of this era laid the groundwork for key AI concepts. For example, Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, from whose name we derive the word algorithm, established the systematic step-by-step problem-solving methods that are the very backbone of every computer program today. This creates an undeniable intellectual lineage. The mechanical principles of Hellenistic Greece were preserved, refined, and dramatically expanded upon in the Islamic world, which in turn provided the technological and mathematical foundation for the European Renaissance, where figures like Leonardo da Vinci were directly influenced by these works. The dawn of AI was not a single event in the 20th century. It was a slow sunrise spanning more than 1,000 years, with the light of knowledge passed carefully from one great civilization to the next. We now leap forward to the mid-20th century and to the figure who, more than any other, stands at the threshold of the modern era of artificial intelligence, Alan Turing. To fully grasp his monumental contribution, we must look at two very different machines that he helped create. The first was a machine of war. During World War II, Turing was a leading mind at Bletchley Park, the British code-breaking center, tasked with the seemingly impossible challenge of cracking the German Enigma code. The Enigma was an electromechanical cipher machine of staggering complexity, capable of scrambling messages into one of 159 quintillion possible combinations. Turing's solution was not just a brilliant mathematical insight, it was an industrial-scale computational machine called the Bombay. The Turing-Welchman Bombay was an electromechanical beast weighing over a ton, filled with rotating drums and miles of wire. It did not think in any human sense. It performed a relentless, high-speed brute force search, based on likely snippets of plain text known as cribs. The Bombay would churn through thousands of possible Enigma settings until it found a logical contradiction and stopped, revealing the daily key. The Bombay was a triumph of specialized, powerful, non-human computation. It demonstrated what machines could do. After the war, Turing turned his attention from a practical problem to a philosophical one. He created his second machine, a thought experiment. He found the popular question, "Can machines think?" to be, in his words, too meaningless to deserve discussion. The question was hopelessly bogged down in the definitions of machine and think. So, in his seminal 1950 paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, he proposed to replace it with a concrete operational test. the imitation game, now famously known as the Turing test. The setup is elegant in its simplicity. An interrogator, C, sits in a room and communicates via a text-only channel with two hidden entities, X and Y. One is a human, B, and the other is a machine, A. The machine's goal is to fool the interrogator into believing it is the human. The human's goal is to help the interrogator make the correct identification. The genius of the test lies in what it excludes. By using a text interface, it makes physical appearance, the sound of a voice, or any other non-intellectual quality irrelevant. As Turing put it, it draws a fairly sharp line between the physical and the intellectual capacities of a man. This is the first common misconception we need to clear up. The Turing test is not a test for consciousness. It's not about whether the machine feels or is aware. It provides a pragmatic way to test for a wide range of human intellectual behaviors, from discussing poetry to solving math problems to expressing emotion without getting stuck in endless debates about consciousness or the soul. Turing then made a bold prediction. He believed that by the year 2000 it would be possible to program computers so well that an average interrogator will not have more than 70% chance of making the right identification after 5 minutes of questioning. For decades, the Turing test stood as the primary philosophical benchmark for machine intelligence. But in 1980, the philosopher John Searle devised a brilliant thought experiment designed to dismantle its very foundation, the Chinese room argument. The scenario asks you to imagine Searle himself, a person who does not speak or understand a single word of Chinese, locked in a room. Inside the room are boxes filled with Chinese characters and a very large rulebook written in English. This rulebook provides instructions for manipulating the Chinese characters. People outside the room slide slips of paper with questions written in Chinese under the door. By meticulously following the instructions in his English rulebook, Searle is able to look up the incoming symbols, find the corresponding symbols, and slide back a perfectly coherent, grammatically correct answer in Chinese. From the perspective of the person outside, the room has passed the Turing test for understanding Chinese. But here is Searle's crucial question. Does he, the man inside the room, understand Chinese? The answer is unequivocally no. He is manipulating symbols that are, to him, completely meaningless. This gets to the heart of Searle's argument, which rests on the critical distinction between syntax and semantics. The computer, like the man in the room, is a master of syntax. It perfectly follows the formal structural rules for manipulating symbols. But Searle argues it has zero semantics, no actual understanding of what those symbols mean. He contends that you can never get from pure symbol manipulation, no matter how complex, to genuine meaning or understanding. The Turing test and the Chinese room argument establish the two poles of the philosophical debate about AI that persists to this day. They force us to confront the fundamental question of whether intelligence is defined by what you do or what you understand. Turing, the pragmatic mathematician, proposed an empirical behavioral test. His is a functionalist view. If a machine's conversational output is indistinguishable from a human's, then for all practical purposes it is intelligent. Searle, the philosopher of mind, counters that this is merely a simulation. He attacks what he calls strong AI, the claim that an appropriately programmed computer literally is a mind, by arguing that behavior is not the same as genuine understanding, intentionality, or consciousness. This is not just a historical footnote. It is the central, unresolved philosophical conflict in the field. Every time we interact with a modern, large language model, we are standing on this intellectual battleground. Are we conversing with something that truly understands, Or are we simply interacting with a very, very sophisticated Chinese room? While Turing and Searle debated the nature of intelligence in the abstract, other pioneers were building the first machines that could actually learn from experience. In 1950, the same year Turing published his paper, Claude Shannon, the brilliant mathematician and father of information theory, unveiled a creation that was part toy, part scientific bombshell, a small mechanical mouse he named Theseus, after the Greek hero who navigated the Minotaur's labyrinth. Theseus was a small, magnetized wooden mouse placed in a 25-square maze with reconfigurable aluminum walls. On its first run, it would explore by trial and error. When its copper wire whiskers touched a wall, it would back up, turn, and try another path. The brain of the system was not in the mouse itself, but in a complex array of 75 electromagnetic relays located beneath the maze floor. These relays, similar to those used in telephone switching networks of the era, recorded which paths were dead ends and which were open. The aha moment came on the second run, after Theseus had successfully found the metal cheese target once. Shannon could place it anywhere in the maze, and it would proceed directly to the goal without making a single wrong turn. It had learned and stored the solution. It could even adapt. If placed in a section it hadn't explored, it would search until it reached a familiar path, at which point it would dash confidently to the finish. At a 1951 conference on artificial intelligence, Shannon's demonstration was a shock. It provided tangible, physical proof that a machine could learn from its mistakes and improve its performance. AI was no longer just a speculative idea. It was a reality you could hold in your hand. Around the same time, an engineer at IBM named Arthur Samuel was working on a program to play the game of checkers. His work was so foundational that he is credited with popularizing the very term machine learning in a 1959 paper. Samuel's program, first developed in 1952 on an early IBM 701 computer, was a landmark achievement because it was explicitly designed to improve its own performance over time. To achieve this, Samuel pioneered several techniques that remain central to AI today. First, rote learning. The program memorized every board position it had ever encountered, along with the results of the game from that position. This created a massive database of experience it could draw upon, effectively allowing it to see deeper into the game each time it played. Second, and even more impressively, learning by generalization. The program could learn without being explicitly taught. Samuel had it play thousands of games against itself. By analyzing which moves led to stronger board positions, the program could gradually adjust the weights in its evaluation function, the part of the code that judged how good a particular board state was. In essence, it taught itself to be a better player. And third, alpha-beta pruning. The number of possible moves in a game like checkers is immense. To make the search for a good move computationally feasible, Samuel implemented an efficient search algorithm now known as alpha-beta pruning. This technique allows the program to quickly discard entire branches of the search tree that are obviously unpromising, without having to analyze every single move. The program was a public sensation. It was demonstrated on television in 1956. Then, in 1962, it achieved a widely publicized victory against Robert Neely, a respectable checkers champion. The event captivated the public imagination and reportedly caused IBM's stock to jump 15 points overnight, a clear sign that the world was beginning to grasp the power of a thinking machine. The work of Shannon and Samuel established a powerful paradigm that would dominate AI research for decades: the use of games and simple, controlled environments as laboratories for intelligence. Samuel himself noted that he chose checkers over the more complex game of chess because its relative simplicity allowed him to concentrate more intensely on learning. These constrained worlds, with their clear rules and measurable outcomes, provided the perfect crucible for forging and testing intelligent algorithms. Defeating a human champion offered an unambiguous benchmark of progress. This approach, first demonstrated by a mechanical mouse and a checkers program, set a course that would lead directly to the great AI milestones of the future, from Deep Blue's chess victory to AlphaGo's conquest of Go. By the mid-1950s, these disparate threads, ancient myths, philosophical inquiry, the raw computational power of the first digital computers, and the first sparks of machine learning, were ready to be woven together into a single tapestry. In the summer of 1956, a small group of leading scientists and mathematicians gathered at Dartmouth College for an 8-week workshop they called the Dartmouth Summer Research Project on Artificial Intelligence. The organizers were a Mount Rushmore of the nascent field. John McCarthy, a young Dartmouth math professor who coined the very term artificial intelligence for the event, Marvin Minsky from MIT, Nathaniel Rochester from IBM, and Claude Shannon, the creator of Theseus. Their proposal for the workshop laid down the foundational belief, the central dogma, of the entire field to come. The project, they wrote, was to proceed on the basis of the conjecture that every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence can in principle be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. This was a breathtakingly audacious declaration of intellectual ambition. That summer-long brainstorming session is now widely considered the founding event of AI as a formal scientific discipline. It has been called the field's constitutional convention. While the attendees did not solve all the problems they set out to tackle, indeed, they quickly realized the challenge was far greater than they had imagined. They gave the field its name, its core mission, and its initial research agenda. They outlined topics like natural language processing, neural networks, computational complexity, and creativity, the very same grand challenges that researchers are still pursuing today. We began this episode with a question: what is AI? And as we have seen, the answer is not a static definition found in a textbook. It is a story, a journey of human imagination and intellect. It is the story of Talos, the bronze guardian, and the golem, the clay protector, powerful myths that encoded our deepest hopes and fears about creations that might one day walk among us and perhaps escape our control. It is the story of Al-Jazari and the Banu Musa brothers, whose mechanical ingenuity began the long, slow process of turning fantasy into physical reality. It is the story of the profound philosophical tension between Alan Turing, who gave us a practical way to test for intelligence by observing its behavior, and John Searle, who challenged us to ask if behavior can ever be the same as belief. And it is the story of Claude Shannon's mouse and Arthur Samuel's checkers program, the first glimmers of a new kind of machine, one that could not only calculate but learn. Artificial intelligence, then, is not just one thing. It is a spectrum of powerful technologies. It is a rigorous field of scientific inquiry, and it is a profound, ongoing philosophical debate. It is simply the modern chapter in one of our oldest and most human quests, to build a mind, and in doing so, to finally understand our own. Now that we've established the philosophical and historical foundations of AI, we're ready to dive into the actual birth of the field. In our next episode, we'll travel to the summer of 1956, when a small group of scientists gathered at Dartmouth College to ask a question that would define a century. We'll meet the four founding fathers of AI: McCarthy, Minsky, Rochester, and Shannon, and deconstruct their audacious grand conjecture that launched the entire field of artificial intelligence. This is where the map for our entire journey is first drawn, and where we'll discover the two great families of AI that would fight for dominance for the next 60 years.
You've been listening to AI Deconstructed. Join us next time as we unpack another layer of the technology shaping our future. Until then, stay curious. Subscribe for more.